This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.
They wouldn't stop telling me how smart I was, so I knew it had to have been defective. I must not care. I must not be motivated. I must not want to do these things. Maybe I'm just obstinate. I don't know what the problem is. They're asking me to do it. I want to do it, but I can't do it.
Hello and welcome to Distraction. Don't you just love joining us? I loved having you join us. It's wonderful to have you with us today. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. You know, I don't have a sweater that I'm taking off, but it's wonderful to have you. And it's wonderful to be alive. And even as we're living through all the stresses and strains that the glorious year of 2020 has bestowed upon us, at least right now we're all alive and able to listen. I'm able to talk. You're able to listen and pay some fraction of your attention. And I hope I can engage you. I think I will today because I have an amazing guest. She is a great example of someone who has learned how to harness their ADHD superpowers. René Brooks is her name. That's R-E-N-E with an accent aigu over the E. René Brooks was diagnosed with ADHD three times before getting properly treated. Once when she was 7, once when she was 11. You've heard that kind of response before, well-meaning, but ill-informed, and finally at age 25, she got diagnosed and properly treated. And now she writes an extremely popular blog called Black Girl Lost Keys. Isn't that a great term? Black Girl Lost Keys. And where she helps empower Black women with ADHD, and I think she empowers an awful lot of people, including this white man, and teaches them how to thrive. Thank you so much for joining me, René Brooks.
Oh, Ned, it's an honor. I tell people all the time, when you're learning about ADHD, you're bound to run into Ned first when you're ready to start taking it seriously. So when I got the request, I was like, yeah, of course I'm coming. When? Now.
Well, I'm honored as well, and it's remarkable. The Black community in general has been underserved, in part because they're suspicious of white men like me trying to control them. So there's been a understandable skepticism, and at the same time, information travels slowly, as you experienced at age 7 and 11. There's a lot of wrong information out there. So there you were, a little girl having the condition, but not being aware of it. So what was it like as a little girl with ADHD that you didn't know you had?
It was frustrating. I felt like I couldn't make anyone happy. I couldn't keep a clean room. I couldn't keep a clean desk. I couldn't get my homework done in a timely fashion. So everywhere I went, I was always faced with this disapproval. And it doesn't do good things for your self-esteem as a child. Children want to make the people around them happy and know that they're doing the things that they need to do to make that happen. And it didn't happen for me.
Say more about that, because I often say to people, you can worry about the side effects of taking medication, which we can control, and there can be side effects. But I say what you really ought to worry about are the side effects of not taking medication. And you experienced those side effects as a little girl, correct?
Absolutely. Like my favorite is when people say, I don't want my child to get a label. Your child is going to get a label. It can either be ADHD or it can be lazy, unmotivated, stupid, uncaring. They're going to get one. You want them to have access to the label that's going to get them the help they need to get where they need to go.
Right, exactly. And you didn't get that.
No.
And so
I underperformed and was frustrated all the way up through college.
And your self-esteem suffered.
Majorly, because you feel like I'm trying my very hardest. I'm being told that I'm not trying my hardest, which makes me think maybe I'm just damaged, bad, whatever adjective you want to give it. It's a
Right.
bad feeling. Like I see other people who I know I should be doing as well as, and I'm not, and I don't understand why.
See, I just want to underscore that because it's so poignant and it is so common. And before I die, I want this never to happen because there you are with a very diagnosable and treatable condition. And you are feeling, I'm trying my best, but everyone's telling me I'm underperforming. And I know I am underperforming. So maybe I am then fill in the blank, stupid, lazy, deformed,
Exactly.
deficit disordered. I mean, maybe I'm just don't have what it takes in this world. And that's just, and year after year you felt that way, right?
Well into adulthood.
Wow.
Well into adulthood. And as the depression got worse and worse, it finally got to the point. By the time I got to the point where I was sitting in that therapist's office that day, I was on medical leave from work. I was so depressed I couldn't get out of bed. It should never have gotten that bad. It didn't have to get that bad.
Absolutely didn't. You could have been diagnosed and treated at age 7.
And I often wonder, people talk about, how remarkable it is to have, made a transformation later in life. But what I'm more interested in, whether it's productive or not, is, left to conjecture. But I'm very interested in who would René Brooks have been if she had gotten what she needed then. If you think I'm great now, how much greater could I have been if I never went through any of this?
Yes. I just want our listeners to let that sink in a little bit. Here's this little girl at age 7, presents for diagnosis and treatment, and it's all right there, right? You were not a tough kid to diagnose, right? If someone knew what they were doing.
I think that in and of itself, and it's funny, like if you want to bring it full circle, my mom got diagnosed with ADHD about 2 years ago. So we were having a talk one day about this particular teacher. It was a 2nd grade teacher who had spotted this in me. And I told her, with the disparity that there is in diagnosing not only Black people, but girls, for her to have cared enough about me and paid enough attention to me to see what was going on and make that kind of recommendation, that lets me know she was a marvelous educator. Yes. And my mom looked at me and she was like, oh my God, I never once thought of it that way. She still saw it as an attack on her kid. And I'm sitting there going, no, she tried really hard to get me help. She was right.
Yes. Did your mother apologize?
She did. But I'll tell you, Ned, I don't feel like my mother owes me an apology because she did what she thought was best at the time. Yes. There's never been a doubt in my mind she did it to protect me. Yes. There's all these. If we have cultural competency, then we know that Black people have been preyed on by the medical community. Yes. We've been abused by various systems that are in place that are supposed to protect us, but often take advantage of us.
So you're naturally suspicious. Yeah. Yeah.
So for her to have snatched her child out of the clutches of that, who could blame her?
Absolutely. And she said, you're not going to label my kid. You're not going to drug my kid. You're not going to, manipulate my kid and the way you've been manipulating Black children for so long. And in this one particular instance, she was wrong. But like you say, she owes you no apology. I mean, it's just...
No.
But today it's happening. And there's less excuse today. But it's still happening. We have the knowledge. It is. But the consumption of the knowledge still lags behind the knowledge, and it's nowhere is it as true in medicine as it is in psychiatry that we know so much more than people are using.
Absolutely the truth. And, that's another thing, swing back around to it. So I was one of those girls that got overlooked in the 90s. But there was a young man who lived in my neighborhood who I was close friends with, and he did have a diagnosis, and he was on Ritalin. And one of the things that I think genuinely scared my mother was that she could see the difference in this child's personality from when he was medicated to when he wasn't. And he was a different person. I think maybe the dosage was just off. We didn't know as much then as we do now. So it was like there were all these things that were not working in my favor. That unfortunate, if someone had taken the time to educate my mother on what ADHD was and what it meant and what it could mean if I didn't have access to treatment, I think the story would have been different. But she didn't have that, and no one tried to give it to her. It was just like, oh, here's this backwards Black woman. Like, of course, Black people don't want to, and that's the impression that is left with so many people, that Black people are too backwards or too ignorant to know that their children need treatment. And that's not the case. The case is that we are not being properly informed because people don't think they need to take the time to inform us.
Say more about that. Say more about the Black side of the story. You know, it would have been different if you were a little white girl.
I don't know, but I do know that my mother was, my mother was a single mom. She she co-parented with so there were all these things that looked like some sort of stereotype that people are used to seeing. My mother had a solid job. My mother was a rock for our family. My dad is a great guy. We have a wonderful relationship. So they needed it to be a stereotype, and it wasn't one. And she wasn't going to let them bully her. They thought that they could come in and give her the direction and that she had to take it, and she wouldn't. So, you know, unfortunately, when people think they are in a position of authority, sometimes they can speak to people in ways that they shouldn't. And I'm quite sure I would put money on the fact that this is how they came at my mother. And I'll tell you, if they came at me like that when I was trying to protect my kid, I can't say I wouldn't have made the same decision that she made. Once
you got the diagnosis, how did your life change?
Oh, man. There's on the blog, I have a post that I wrote about the first time that I ever took medication. I was being treated for depression for 6 months. So they had jumped me around from trying to get me into an antidepressant that would work. And I said to my doctor, you know, if this is another 6 to 8 week thing, I'm just not going to do another med like this. I can't. I don't have the patience. And she said to me, Renee, you'll know in probably a few hours if this is going to be the right thing for you. And I had my room was always jumbled and scattered and disorganized. And I had been working on it here and there for like the better part of maybe 2 years, trying to get it organized. By the end of the afternoon, I had it done. And that's when I knew, like, this is the thing. This is what I needed. Like, I'm going to be the medication is not the only tool in the arsenal, but that was when I knew they were right. It was ADHD. The meds were going to help me fix it. Yeah.
It was like you were given eyeglasses.
Exactly that. For the very first time. And it's funny, if you'd have known me when I was 25, I'm 35 now, I would never in my life have thought that I would be writing a cleaning book for people with ADHD and that they would be like, oh my God, this is so helpful. Because I was a slob, Ned.
It would be like the Pope writing a sex manual, right?
It would have been.
Oh, goodness me. Well, there you go. You got your eyeglasses, and now your book is called Everything You Need to Completely Clean with ADHD. I mean, wow, what a turnaround.
It's every once in a while I look around and I'm just like, this is a lot different than what things used to be like.
Well, we should tell our listeners, if they want to see get the book or see it, your website is Black Girl Lost Keys. Those 4 words, Black Girl, singular, Lost Keys, plural, .com. And your Twitter handle is at BLK girl. They wouldn't let her have the AC. So it's BLK girl lost keys. By the way, sometimes people ask for my Twitter handle, and it's at Dr. Hallowell. No period after DR, just at Dr. Hallowell. And I'll tweet about you, and you can tweet about me.
You bet I will. I'm telling you, this is quite something, Ned Hallowell. If you would have told me at 25 I'd be sitting talking to Ned Hallowell, I'd have been like, you are a liar.
well, Renee, we got to team up and reach all those little girls, because girls and women are the biggest undiagnosed group. And among them, Black girls, I'm sure, are the leading underdiagnosed group, for all the reasons you mentioned. And boy, you're perfectly positioned to change that. And I will help you in every single way I possibly can. Because unlike so many diagnoses, this is good news. Things can only get better when you find out about it.
And that's it. People talk about, oh, well, they're trying to drug you up. First of all, no one told you had to take medication to treat your ADHD. Although I will be honest, I'm very pro medication. Medication changed my life.
Yes, yes.
Coaching changed my life as well, yes. But it was both of them. It wasn't one or the other.
But Renee, it's a lot easier for you to use the coaching if you're on the medication.
Exactly that. And I always was. That's the thing. It's like in order to absorb information, you have to be able to give it as much attention as you can give it. That right. Medication gave me the opportunity to take in as much as I could.
Right. It doesn't make you smarter, but it makes you able to use your smarts more effectively. A lot like eyeglasses.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a multi-pronged approach. And, but you're such a messenger to these little girls and their parents, because you know firsthand what it's like not to have the diagnosis, and then what a liberating, uplifting thing it is to get the diagnosis and the treatment that comes with it. What would you say to people who say, I don't have brain damage, I don't have this deficit disorder? What would you say to that?
I would tell them that I was in gifted and talented for the vast majority of my school career, and I still couldn't turn my homework in, but I can
right.
turn it in now. Right,
right. And you were being told to try harder.
All the time, because of course, if I wasn't performing, it must have been because I was bored, because I'm so darn smart. Now we've got her in these gifted and talented classes that are really just additional work, if we're being honest. So now I'm not doing homework in any of those places. And everyone is telling me, look, we know exactly how smart you are, kid. We tested you. What's the problem? How are you supposed to tell a group of adults what the problem is when you don't know?
Exactly. And then you reach wrong conclusions, like you're not very smart, or maybe you're just defective,
Well, I'll tell you, they wouldn't stop telling me how smart I was. So I knew it had to have been defective. I must not care. I must not be motivated. I must not want to do these things. Maybe I'm just obstinate. I don't know what the problem is. They're asking me to do it. I want to do it, but I can't do it.
Such a profound difference between won't and can't. Exactly
that. It was like, don't you think I would rather, no kid wants to be in trouble. Right. I'm not saying that every kid is a saint, but what human being in general wants to be in trouble if they have a method to avoid it? Why would anyone choose to not do their homework and not clean their room? Oh my God, I spent half my teen years grounded because my room was messy. Why would anyone choose that? No one chooses that. Nonsense.
Right. Well, look how you turned it all around, and look at what you're doing now. It's really impressive. Again, the website is blackgirllostkeys.com. And the Twitter handle is at BLK Girl Lost Keys. René Brooks. Do you have another book in mind?
I would say if you're going to check books out on the store, I've got a style guide for ADHD femmes that is also a lot of fun. there's that one. I did one about tackling time blindness. That
Excellent.
one was a lot of fun. They're fun to write. They're workbooks, so they're fast, they're colorful, they're fun. You can pick it up and go any place in the book you want. It's not something where you have to read from beginning to end. We hate that. Like, I have to write the book, so it has to be interesting to me.
Right.
So, it's going to be generally, we're not all the same, obviously, but it had to have been interesting enough to me to write it. So I try to keep it as engaging as I can, because cleaning's not very interesting, but this is
you
fun.
Make it
There's sections in it, and that's it. Like, you know what it is? When you can succeed at something, it starts to not be so boring. Then it becomes like, okay, here's this thing that I got to do. But I know I can get it done. It doesn't feel insurmountable anymore. I don't have to procrastinate as much because I know I can go in, spend this 10, 15 minutes, and at least walk out with something accomplished.
Yes. Even just the feeling that I accomplished it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like, for example, our dishwasher is broken. So after I finish with you today, I've got to go down and do by hand a big sink load of dishes. But I'm looking forward to it. And I'll tell you why, because I'm looking forward to the feeling I will have of having done something concrete of value. And, nothing could be more concrete than washing dishes, So
you do. You get that. It's right there waiting for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I can either hate it and put it off and rue the day that I ever bought a dishwasher that would break, or go down and plunge my hands into the soapy water and say, all right, dishes, you're not going to defeat me. And
that's the attitude. That's the way to come at it. But yeah,
that's the ADD way. Look at you. You didn't give up. You just kept plucking along.
And I think that's the thing. I think it's normal for people to get discouraged and take a break, but don't quit. Just keep going.
Yeah. What's the key to not quitting, do you think?
I don't know. I wish I did. I think, it's just one of those things where I just felt like if I keep looking for the answer, I'm going to find it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've got to find it because, you know what? It's funny. I'll tell you what the key for mine was anyway. My mother might not have gotten me treated for ADHD, but what she did teach me was that happiness was my birthright, but it was also my personal responsibility, that I had to find happiness and nobody else could find it for me. Mm-hmm. So when I would look at my life, I could say, I'm not happy, therefore I'm not finished yet. I have more work to do here. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've got many years ahead of you. I'm pretty much twice your age, and I wish I could live long enough to see you go all the way. Do you have any immediate goals?
I'll tell you, this month, of course, it's ADHD Awareness Month. So I'm going to be speaking on the 17th at a neurodiversity conference for Stanford University. And I laughed when they called me. I said, I couldn't get into Stanford with the grades that I had.
But with the brain you have, you could get in today,
And that's the thing. My grades couldn't get me there, but my brain took me there anyway. Isn't that something?
Yeah. It just shows how misleading grades can be.
Then there's that, that I think that was it. So much of the grades in school were whether or not you could do the busy work. It didn't have anything to do with whether or not you'd learned the material.
Right. No, exactly. Could you memorize and repeat back? And that's, we don't do that well. We like to think and create and discover.
Absolutely the truth.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Again, at BLK Girl Lost Keys, the Twitter handle, and the website blackgirllostkeys.com. Her book, Everything You Need to Completely Clean with ADHD. What an irony that you would end up writing that book and teaching people with ADHD how to clean. And you've got another one on how to negotiate another tough topic, time, and how we don't have a sense of time. But you've got so much more yet to do in your life, Renee. Thank you for joining us. And congratulations on having persisted and triumphed.
Ned, thank you so very much. I'll tell you, this was quite a pleasure. Thank you very, very much for having me.
Thank you, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
All right, take care.
Take care.
The episode you just heard was made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.